Hey, Crystal Maiden here, and this is Kakariko Village. Kakariko Village. When I was a kid, I always referred to this place as Kakariko Village, and I'm not really sure why. It's not spelled like that at all. But to this day, I always prefer calling it Kakariko Village because that's how I always called it as a kid, and Kakariko just sounds really weird and a bit too Japanese for a Zelda game. I know it's made in Japan, but it's still based in Western Europe, you know? So it seems really weird to have a village with a clearly Japanese name. Like, I know Kakaroo sounds weird to you, but haven't you ever had those things where you mispronounce a word even though it's clearly spelled not that way, and you've been pronouncing it that way for so long that you don't want to pronounce it any way differently? Just like in the previous Zelda games, there's no indication whatsoever of which ways you can push blocks. It's just that you're arbitrarily not allowed to push them a certain way, and it's only through trial and error that you know that you can't push them that way. One of the things this game introduces to Zelda franchise, among many others, is the concept of, well, not only picking up and throwing bombs, but also jumping off ledges. There's a whole top floor and bottom floor mechanic, which leads to a really awesome glitch that I'll be sure to talk all about in an extra part. Well, extra parts, because there's a lot of parts that's going to be devoted to that. Well, 3 anyways. I don't really like the shallow water because you walk slower when you're in it. But yeah, there's really no official way, there's really no official place to get bombs. There's no official bomb bag in this game. You just get bombs and you can get them from anywhere. The game continues to drop bombs throughout the entire game, even if you haven't gotten a bomb bag beforehand. But I consider that cave to be the official place to get bombs. And isn't it annoying when you get to a cracked wall and you don't have bombs yet? Although that's only going to happen once in this game because you get the bomb so early, which is good. This is another Easter egg. Always teasing your friends. I haven't attacked a cuckoo yet. Yeah, the chickens in this game are called cuckoos. Dead in 2 hits. Wow, intimidating. Although I guess the music is sort of intimidating. Yeah, you don't really have to be all stealthy around the villagers because pulled here, and I'm not really sure how you're supposed to know that, but yeah, you can get money from there. You just robbed her house. And you don't have to be all stealthy around the villagers because they can see you. You can walk right up to them. And you have to literally walk into them for them to call the soldiers on you. Worst patrollers ever. This house is kind of annoying to get to because you have to cut bushes to get to it, but it's not that big of a deal. He's not used to people visiting, even though there's 6 beds in there. There's so many beds that I assume it's an inn, but there's only 1 person living there. Is he... I don't understand. Yeah, this is the sick kid, and he has some unique dialogue that he says in the Super Nintendo version if you don't have a bottle when you get to him. I'll be showing that off in an extra video. It makes sense that these bottles are called magic bottles because they can hold, like, say, you can put bees in them. This guy's annoying. You can put bees in them. Yep, that's another Easter egg. You can get a free fairy, and you can get it as many times as you want, which is pretty convenient. I still usually rely on fairy fountains, though. And you pick them up and throw them, and they run away scared, even though you haven't attacked them. Yeah, and you can get arrows before even getting the bow. You don't have to get an official quiver in this game, which is unrealistic, but I like it. Yeah, you don't kill her because she respawns, and although she doesn't have dialogue where she acknowledges that you did that to her. That's weird. Are you talking about the grandpa? Is it normal for children to refer to old men who aren't their grandfather the grandpa? There's a lot of concepts this game introduced. The chickens, picking up objects, a whole bunch of brand new items, and the concept of having stores where you walk into the items and press R, no, you press A to pick them up, and that's how you buy them. In Zelda 1, you just walked into them, and you bought them. Yeah, attack chickens enough and a swarm of them will fly at you, magically summoned, and you can pick them up. You can pick up some of the chickens while they're swarming you. Yeah, don't buy the hearts because even though they're just 10 rupees, they're still a ripoff. I mean, you can get hearts by just cutting the grass. And Liquid Tree Worlds actually makes fun of that, calling it a ripoff. But yeah, there's a lot of... Look at that. How are you supposed to know that's a cracked wall just by looking at it? I mean, it is very suspicious that it's a building that doesn't have any door, and it can't be there for nothing. But still, most cracked walls in this game, it's blatantly obvious that they're cracked walls. But this game goes back to Zelda 1 for some reason. There were a lot of new concepts that this game introduced to Zelda franchise. Like it introduced the concept of cracked walls, so that you can actually tell that you can bomb a wall and get a cave. And it introduced the concept of NPCs and villages. And Zelda 2 was the first to do that, but it was a side-scroller platformer. And there's so many new things that this game has, like the bug net, the bug catching net. This is a concept that was never used again, except in Liquid Tree Worlds, obviously. But that game was a huge homage to this one, although added in a bunch of really annoying mechanics that kind of detracted from the whole homage thing. There are some cracked walls that you can break by dashing into them, but you won't be able to do that until a little later. This is the only NPC in the game that talks to you automatically, and you can't talk to him by pressing A no matter what you do. You can't talk to her. Yeah, this is the right route to take. You can reach her in 8 seconds if you do this. Yep, you're trying to talk to her and you can't. Yeah, it was 20 rupees, not 30 rupees. I prefer the concept of being able to open treasure chests in the gambling rooms, rather than you just walking into rupees. Because that was kind of weird. The blue soldiers take more hits to kill than the green ones, but other than that, they act exactly the same. They look at you, and they stay still for a few seconds before charging at you and making a sound. But for the most part, they walk back and forth and they patrol. I like this song. I like the flute boy. And then he disappears for some reason. Yeah, this is one of those big-lipped alligator moments that's never really explained properly. And it's gonna get even weirder. But yeah, see, they're walking back and forth with their swords out, patrolling, and they look multiple ways. They stand still and they look multiple ways. And if they see you, they run at you. And if you make... Yeah, you can hear the Kakaroo village theme in Link's house, even though he's nowhere near that village. But yeah, if you make sounds near the soldiers, it'll attract them to you. Like, again, this game is such an obvious improvement in technology from the NES. There's so many things that it accomplishes. It makes sense that it's called the Magic Bottle, because among other things, well, you can actually catch bees in this game, and you can hold them in the bottles infinitely, and they won't die of starvation or dehydration or not having enough air. And catching them will cause them to be brainwashed into being on your side and fighting on your side. So yeah, it makes sense that the bottles are called magical. In every other game, they aren't called magical. You can talk to the fortune tellers for advice on what to do next, something that Zelda 1 desperately should have had. Although, the fortune tellers don't tell you, well, they don't really need to tell you where in the overworld to go. I mean, they tell you to go to the desert, but you have a map that shows you where the desert is. So they don't need to tell you to go to the southwest corner of the overworld. But I think if Zelda 1 had the concept of a fortune teller, then its no direction problem could have been solved. But I don't think the NES was capable of that. It was such a non-linear game. I mean, what advice the fortune teller gives you changes depending on what part of the game you're in. When you make progress with the game, the fortune teller will stop giving you certain advice. And the fortune teller charges a different price every time, but it's always a cheap one. And the fortune teller has special dialogue if you talk to her when you don't have enough money. She says that she's not feeling well because she psychically knows that you don't have enough money, and she's too polite to tell you to scram. I think it's a she. I think Link Between Worlds had a fortune teller that was a he, but the fortune teller is wearing purple, so I think of purple as a female color, although less so when it's dark purple. Yeah, this is the Hasperlath. I'm not really sure why so many people have a hard time pronouncing his name, and a but the must situation, wonderful. I mean, really, what's the point of having multiple different options that you can choose in the dialogue if they both mean the exact same thing and give you the exact same dialogue afterwards? What's the point? It's the illusion of choice, and I don't think... Why? That's such a waste of development time to have a dialogue tree there. That's pointless. And yeah, and of course, they're not even different in tone. I mean, you can't say a enthusiastic yes and a non-enthusiastic yes. You can't display your personality or anything. The Armo statues are kind of annoying because you walk up to them and they come to life and start jumping at you and attacking you. Although I find them a lot less annoying than the Armos in Zelda 1. Because they're always charging at you, and you can always know exactly where they're going to go. Not like the Armos move in unpredictable directions, so it's a lot easier for them to run into you. Yeah, I kind of like that section, the dodging the balls thing, but I also kind of hate it because, look, the two walkways above that section are blocking your view of the balls. And I think that's really cheap that you're expected to dodge them when you can't see them. And it feels kind of tense, but you always feel like an expert when you get past that section without getting hit once. Especially if you get past it without ever stopping. Yep, the dungeon map. Press X and you can see a map layout of the entire dungeon. In fact, you can even see the dungeon rooms that you haven't visited yet, and they're helpfully in a different color than the ones you have visited. Zelda 1 never had that, and Zelda 2 most glaringly never had that. So, this is good for completionists who, if you missed a room, then it's easy because now you know exactly what room you missed. Yeah, just throw jars at them and you'll be fine. They jump away at you and try to attack them, which is really annoying, but try to throw jars at them and hope you won't miss. The compass is another thing introduced in this game, and so are these tiles, these little hint tiles. hint tiles that I don't think appear in other Zelda games. I mean, you have annoying sidekicks that give you advice in later Zelda games, and I guess those sort of count as telepathic tiles, but you don't have things that you can talk to in the dungeons that give you advice very often in later games. Yeah, those things come to life when you walk up to them. But the really annoying thing is, they go back to sleep again after a while, and when they go back to sleep, you can't attack them. Which is really annoying because there are some rooms that it's mandatory to kill them to move on. So you want to kill them as fast as possible, and it takes a lot of hits to bring them down. These are bubbles. They're also called anti-fairies for some reason, and this is why. Because if you use magic powder on them, they turn to fairies, which is awesome. This is why it's a very good idea to have the magic powder as soon as possible. Of course, if this is the first time playing the game, you're probably just going to head straight to Kakaroo Village and not know that you have to. You're probably not going to even know about the magic powder until later in the game. You might not go into the Lost Woods until you're told to get the Master Sword. So it's a good idea to have magic powder coming into this dungeon. If you don't turn the bubbles into fairies, you can still avoid getting hit by them by just rushing. Yeah, you can't turn these specific ones into fairies, because that would make it too easy to cheat past them. But you can still avoid defeating all of the enemies and making them scatter by just walking into them. But I don't recommend it because you lose a lot more health than you would have lost if you had taken the time to defeat all of these enemies. Yeah, this is the first Zelda game to introduce the concept of the big key. And weirdly enough, it has a lot of big key doors that don't lead to the boss, but are still needed to be opened with big key to progress through the dungeon, which is pretty unique to this game. You can shoot arrows until you run out. When I was a kid, I sort of took offense to that. Like, I took it in a rude way, like, shoot arrows until you run out. Especially, it's kind of compounded by the fact that when you get the item, then the skeletons drop to the ground and their heads detach and they fly after you. And you can't attack the skulls that are flying after you. They're completely invincible. Yeah, arrows one-shot these guys. They have this one big eye. They're not nearly as annoying as the Gomas in Zelda 1. But they have one big eye, and that's, I guess, supposed to be a hint. That and the fact that they appear in the same dungeon as the dungeon where you get the bow. Yeah, you can carry. This Zelda game introduces the concept of you having an arrow ammo, because in Zelda 1, you would lose arrows, and you would lose rupees when you tried to use the arrows. In this game, it has a separate ammo counter, and it starts out being 3 times as high as the bomb counter. Although I like the fact that the bomb counter it starts at 10 instead of 8, which is higher, which is good. And those switches that I stepped on are really annoying because you can't tell by looking at them which switches do stuff when you hit them, which is trial and error. You always feel like a badass when you get past those red monsters in one go without them ever falling asleep. Yeah, this boss is pretty easy, and I like it. I really find it satisfying shooting arrow after arrow. Just stand to the south of them and fire arrows, because you're a lot more likely to miss if you try to hit them from the left or from the right. I don't like the way the pendants look in this game. They're supposed to be necklaces, but they don't look anything like it. But yeah, That was the Pendant of Courage. And I like the jingle that plays when you get them. That's satisfying. And the fact that there's a special animation for getting them. See you in the next part.